reaction to the violence that we saw take place at the Washington, D.C. march in support of Trump.
Yeah, so much for the peaceful transfer of power. We have people peacefully exercising their First Amendment rights, attacked by the violent left that's been in many ways egged on by the big media and allied politicians in a Democratic Party. So, the problem that Americans have right now, they see an election that's been questioned because of substantial allegations of the maladministration of the election. That's the most charitable interpretation of it.
The board there were blocking the certification of the votes. Now, they claimed it was because there were irregularities, that there was an imbalance in a couple of the precincts where the signatures in the poll book didn't match up with the number of votes that were tabulated.
Bring you these live events as they're happening worldwide, and these are going to be some big events coming out of Georgia and Michigan. Let's show you the look right now where we are awaiting from the NAACP in Michigan. It was a wild night in Michigan yesterday in a specific county in Detroit there as a certification update. For a moment last night, they would not certify the election in that county, and then hours later, reversing course here, and we're going to give you the update on why that all happened. This was coming out of Michigan's Wayne County certification, the deadlock leading to a unanimous certification after allegations of racism happened here. So it was a wild and crazy night. Let's break it all down for you right here on News Now from Fox. Jenna Ellis, a senior legal advisor to the Trump 2020 campaign, told Fox News at night yesterday that the two Republicans on Michigan's Wayne County Board of Canvassers involved in a brief deadlock in the county's election certification process faced threats and allegations of racism before they agreed to certify the ballots. Their decision to side with their Democratic colleagues was dramatic and viewed by conservatives on social media as just a laydown after a brutal 2-hour public pressure campaign. Ellis told Shannon Bream, the host of the show, that she received reports that these two board members correctly spotted discrepancies, and she said that the ballot counts in 71% of the county's precincts do not match voter rolls. That's significant, she said, and that doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican. You should be concerned about that. Kayleigh McEnany, Trump's White House press secretary, announced earlier.
Kayleigh McEnany is back with us. 2,600 votes yesterday, 2,700 votes today. Let's go for an even 20,000 tomorrow. Any chance we might get 20 more thousand there somewhere?
Hey, there's certainly a chance, because as I'm coming to air with you tonight, Sean, there's reporting that in a third county in Georgia, in Walton County, they have found the same issue, a memory card that was not registered with votes. And guess what? These votes favor President Donald J. Trump. We were told yesterday when the first batch was discovered by the Georgia Secretary of State, this is very concerning because there are checks and balances in place. The local officials should resign. Well, these checks and balances appear to be fatally flawed, systematically irregular, to have happened now not in 1, 2, but 3 Georgia counties, amounting to the disenfranchisement of nearly 5,000 voters. What is going on here? Every American should be concerned.
Well, where's the governor? Where the Secretary of State is picking fights with Doug Collins and Lindsey Graham? Why isn't he fixing the system? Has anybody gotten an answer from him?
No, we haven't. It's a question the president's asking. It's a question really we're all asking, because this isn't about a party, Sean. This is about the integrity of our election system. And you have the same mistake in 3 counties, and the count has not ended yet. It won't end until midnight tomorrow. So it's a great question you asked.
Thanks for being with us again here on the Howie Carr Show.
Well, thanks for having me again, Howie.
Well, first of all, I should ask you about there were reports that there's an quote-unquote emergency meeting of the White House legal team today at the White House. Do you know anything about this?
I do not. And let me say this for clarification. I don't represent President Trump, and I do not represent the Republican Party of Georgia or the National Republican Party. I have met with a number of individuals in the Republican Party. I've talked with some of their lawyers. I'm working in an unofficial capacity to try to help the president. So I'm working closely with Sidney Powell, and with Mayor Giuliani. If they need me, I'm there for them. And I am aware of information. I met with Sydney yesterday all day, and I don't know the nature of the meeting, but I know that things are going to be rapidly developing over the course of the next few days, because the evidence of the computer voting fraud is mounting daily, which is a separate issue than the issue I raised when I filed my lawsuit against the Secretary of State here in Georgia. But at the end of the day, both issues are related, because both mechanisms, both the absentee ballots and the computer voting machines, constituted the fraud that was perpetrated upon the people of the United States of America.
Democrats are in trouble.
So as you look all across the country, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, we're looking at New Mexico, we're looking at Nevada, of course. Nevada, major lawsuit filed, and a election of a Democrat overturned in the last 2 days. The Democrats are in trouble. They're in trouble. You know, the chickens are coming home to roost.
Where's the emphasis? You mentioned New Mexico. Are we getting a scoop here? Is there some issue in New Mexico?
So I was alerted to the fact that in New Mexico, outside of Bellevue County, which is the county where Albuquerque is, there was an issue with observers not being allowed to observe that has impacted, I believe, up to 180,000 ballots. 180,000 ballots. Do you know what the difference in the state of New Mexico is between sleepy Joe Biden and the President of the United States?
I take it's less than 180,000.
It's 99,000. That's what it is. So the state of New Mexico, which has always been ripe with all kinds of fraud and all kinds of issues, is definitely another state where we're taking a hard look at. So as you go across the country, this chicanery, this wrongdoing, this attempted steal by the Democrats is being exposed anywhere and everywhere by the President of the United States.
Did you hear that?
Out of Michigan at this hour as articles of impeachment are introduced against Governor Gretchen Whitmer there over the state's plan to enforce more virus-related restrictions. Brand new hour here in America's Newsroom. Welcome. I'm Sandra Smith. Hi, Trace.
Sandra, good morning to you again. Good morning, everyone. I'm Trace Gallagher. 3 Michigan House Republicans filing the resolution arguing Governor Whitmer's new limits on gatherings violate the constitutional rights of Michigan citizens, among other things. The articles also accuse her of corruption. The governor's office has dismissed the impeachment effort, saying, quote, Governor Whitmer doesn't have any time for partisan politics or people who don't wear masks, don't believe in science, and don't have a plan to fight this virus.
Mike Tobin live in Chicago on this developing story. Hey, Mike.
And Sandra, it's important to note right off the top, although there's a great deal of opposition to Governor Gretchen Whitmer and her handling of the pandemic, this resolution does not have universal support from Michigan Republicans. In fact, the leadership in both the State House and the Senate do not support it. Lee Chatfield, the Republican Speaker of the House, told our Fox affiliate the resolution is a distraction from what needs to be done in the state. Mike Shirkey, the Senate Majority Leader, says he has not signed on to the resolution. However, 3 Republicans in the House, Representatives Bo LaFave, Dare Rendon, and Matt Murdock, introduced the resolution arguing that Governor Whitmer should be removed from office for corrupt conduct, crimes, and misdemeanors. Part of the resolution reads she has exceeded her constitutional authority, violated the constitutional rights of the people of Michigan, issued orders that are not in the best interests of the people of the state, and used the pandemic as an opportunity to reward political allies. The resolution argues that Whitmer bypassed the legislature with executive orders, banned free exercise of religion, offered no-bid contracts to political allies, and failed to manage the crisis. Now, Whitmer has come under fire for the harsh and critics say arbitrary nature of the lockdowns in Michigan. The Wolverine state just extended the shutdown for 3 weeks. Whitmer used the word pause. One of the authors of the resolution, Matt Murdock, reportedly said that was the tipping point. It should be noted that Michigan has seen a 29% increase in coronavirus cases over the past week. Sandra?
Mike Tobin, thank you.
Check this out.
We have declarations. We have declarations from over 400 people just so far, Nevadans, that go to the fact that these irregularities and this fraud existed, and we are going to put on evidence admissible in a court of law and let a court see what actually happened here.
We had a Freudian slip. by the candidate. And he said he had the best voter fraud team in the country. That's the reason why he probably didn't have to go out and campaign. He had to have known what they were going to do. This had to be planned in advance. I'm kind of checking, did they go, to the same contractor to get the corrals to put the Republicans in? And this is a disgraceful thing that was done in this country. Probably not much more disgraceful than the things these people did in office, which you didn't and don't bother to cover and you conceal from the American people. But we let this happen. We use largely a Venezuelan voting machine, in essence, to count our vote. If we let this happen, we're going to become Venezuela. We cannot let this happen to us. We cannot not allow these crooks, because that's what they are, to steal an election from the American people. They elected Donald Trump. They didn't elect Joe Biden. Joe Biden is in the lead because of the fraudulent ballots, the illegal ballots that were produced and that were allowed to be used after the election was over. Give us an opportunity to prove it in court, and we will. Now I'm going to ask Sidney Powell to describe to you what we can describe about another.
And we continue to be listening to this update from President Trump's legal team. Some of you are going to be taking a quick 2-minute break. Stay right here with us on News Now from Fox.
Open to change. And it's being done by a company that specializes in voter fraud. I'll let Sidney describe that to you.
Thank you, Rudy. What we are really dealing with here and uncovering more by the day is the massive influence of communist money through Venezuela, Cuba, and likely China in the interference with our elections here in the United States. The Dominion voting systems, the Smartmatic technology software, and the software that goes in other computerized voting systems here as well, not just Dominion, were created in Venezuela at the direction of Hugo Chavez to make sure he never lost an election after one constitutional referendum came out the way he did not want it to come out. We have one very strong witness who has explained how it all works. His affidavit is attached to the pleadings of Lynn Wood in the lawsuit he filed in Georgia. It is a stunning, detailed affidavit because he was with Hugo Chavez while he was being briefed on how it worked. He was with Hugo Chavez when he saw it operate to make sure the election came out his way. That was the express purpose for creating this software. He has seen it operate, and as soon as he saw the multiple states shut down the voting on the night of the election, he knew the same thing was happening here, that was what had gone on. Now, the software itself was created with so many variables and so many back doors that can be hooked up to the internet or a thumb drive stuck in it or whatever. But one of its most characteristic features is its ability to flip votes. It can set and run an algorithm that probably ran all over the country to take a certain percentage of votes from President Trump and flip them to President Biden, which we might never have uncovered had the votes for President Trump not been so overwhelming in so many of these states that it broke the algorithm that had been plugged into the system. And that's what caused them to have to shut down in the states they shut down in. That's when they came in the back door with all the mail-in ballots, many of which they had actually fabricated. Some were on pristine paper with identically matching perfect circle dots for Mr. Biden. Others were shoved in batches. They're always put in a certain number of batches, and people would rerun the same batch. This corresponds to our statistical evidence that shows incredible spikes in the vote counts at particular times, and that corresponds to eyewitness testimony of numerous people who have come forward and said they saw the ballots come in the back door at that time. Notably, the Dominion executives are nowhere to be found now. They are moving their offices overnight to different places. Their office in Toronto was shared with one of the Soros entities. One of the leaders of the Dominion project overall is Lord Malloch Brown, Mr. Soros' number 2 person in the UK and part of his organization. There are ties of the Dominion leadership to the Clinton Foundation and to other known politicians in this country. Just to give you a brief description of how this worked, I'm going to quote from a letter that was written, and I will read that to make sure I get the quotes right. This person was objecting to the United States acquisition of Sequoia voting systems by Smartmatic, a foreign-owned company. I believe this transaction raises exactly the sort of foreign ownership issues that CFIUS is best positioned to examine for national security purposes. It's undisputed that Smartmatic is foreign-owned and it has acquired Sequoia. They keep changing the names as they go along. Different times when a problem comes up, they just create another corporation and call it a different name. But it was a voting machine company doing business in the United States. Sequoia voting machines were used to record over 125 million votes during the 2004 presidential election in the United States. Smartmatic now acknowledges that Antonio Mujica, a Venezuelan businessman, has controlling interest in Smartmatic, but the company has not revealed who all the Smartmatic owners are. According to the press, Smartmatic's owners are hidden through a web of offshore private entities, and that is in fact true. Smartmatic has been associated with the Venezuelan government led by Hugo Chavez, which is openly hostile to the United States, and of course, as we all know, communistic and really brutalizing its own people. The system has been continued there by Mr. Maduro and ensured his election. Smartmatic's possible connection to the Venezuelan government poses a potential national security concern in the context of its acquisition of Sequoia, because electronic voting machines are susceptible to tampering, and insiders are in the best position to engage in such tampering. This letter expresses concern of the Chicago 2006 primary election. And it ends by saying the products and services that are of Venezuelan origin, and evaluate Smartmatic's ownership to determine who could have influence and control over these and other Sequoia products and services are important to the national security of the United States. This letter was written to Hank Paulson on October 6, 2006 by Congresswoman Carolyn B. Maloney. Senators Klobuchar and Warren have raised these concerns as recently as December 2019. Why our government has not taken them seriously is beyond my comprehension, unless they have, some of the 3-letter agencies have used them themselves in other parts of the world. We know that the technology was exported to affect an election in Argentina. That's admitted by our friend who wrote the affidavit about Hugo Chavez and his interest in Smartmatic. Again, in 2006, Carolyn Maloney wrote the Honorable John Snow, the Secretary of the Treasury, about the issues. Speaking of Smartmatic's leadership, one of the Smartmatic patent holders, Eric Coomer, I believe his name is on the web as being recorded in a conversation with Antifa members saying that he had the election rigged for Mr. Biden, nothing to worry about here, and they were going to F Trump. His social media is filled with hatred for the president and for the United States of America as a whole, as are the social media accounts of many other Smartmatic people. There has been widespread use of this. Dominion itself is utilized in 2,000 jurisdictions in 30 states. It has been uncertifiable in multiple states who realized all the problems that it had, including Texas. Experts have described it across the board, from a Princeton group of 3 professors to experts that we have talked to about its end user vulnerabilities. People can admittedly go in and change whatever they want. They can set the ratio of votes from one thing to another. They can say that a Biden vote counts as 1.25 and a Trump vote counts as 0.75. And those may be the numbers that were actually used here. It's not just the swing states that were affected. The algorithm was likely run across the country to affect the entire election. Like I said, we only discovered it this year because of the overwhelming number of votes for President Trump in the swing states that caused the machines to have to shut down for them to backfill for adding votes. We have evidence of different numbers of votes being injected into the system, the same identical, unique 6-digit number multiple times in at least 2 states that we've analyzed so far, and I'm talking about like 341,542 votes for Biden and 100,012 for Trump. There's no explanation, no logical explanation for the same numbers being injected 20 minutes apart into the machine. The software manual itself, you can download it from the internet, and I would encourage you all to read it because it specifically advertises some of these things as features of the system. Why it was ever allowed into this country is beyond my comprehension, and why nobody has dealt with it is absolutely appalling. The machines were easily accessible to hackers. There's video on the net that it will explain to you how a kid with a cell phone can hack one of these voting machines. There's been no oversight of Dominion or its software. Workers in each county were trained by Dominion, but there's no evidence of any monitoring otherwise. We have testimony of different workers admitting that they were trained how to dispose of Trump votes and add to Biden votes. The software has a feature pursuant to which you can drag and drop any number of batches of votes to the candidate of your choice or simply throw them away. So we have mathematical evidence in a number of states of massive quantities of Trump votes being trashed, just simply put in the trash like you would on your computer with any file, and Biden votes being injected. That's addition to the flipping. I mean, it really happens in 2 ways. There's an algorithm that runs that automatically flips all the votes, and then each operator has the ability to go in, override settings. They can ignore a signature. They can ignore the top line of the ballot. They can go down ballot and select who they want to change the results for. The gentleman who founded Smartmatic, there's video of him on the internet explaining that, yes, at least one occasion, he admits they changed 1 million votes with no problem. Many of the jurisdictions that have had this problem might not have known of the issues, but many did. And I think a full-scale criminal investigation needs to be undertaken immediately by the Department of Justice and by every state's equivalent, Attorney General's office or state investigatory unit, because there's evidence of different benefits being provided to the people who spent $100 million of taxpayer money at the last minute for their state to get the Dominion voting systems put in time for this election in different ways. There's one person that a lawyer told me got, quote, election insurance, meaning that he would be able to make sure he was elected. I'm sure they explained that feature in detail to many people who expressed interest in putting this voting system in. Texas denied certification of the Dominion system in 2019, but there are no doubt issues with the software that Texas did use, unbeknownst to Texas, I would imagine, since they went to great trouble to examine the Dominion systems and reject them. But other software, the source code that does the alterations is embedded, we have been told, in the source code all across the country and all the voting machines. There's no doubt it has been used to alter elections in other countries. We know specifically that Venezuela exported it for that purpose to Argentina and other Latin American companies to make sure that the corrupt rulers who were willing to pay the highest price for being in office were allowed to rig their elections. This is stunning, heartbreaking, infuriating, and the most unpatriotic acts I can even imagine for people in this country to have participated in any way, shape, or form. And I want the American public to know right now that we will not be intimidated. American patriots are fed up with the corruption from the local level to the highest level of our government, and we are going to take this country back. We are not going to be intimidated. We are not going to back down. We are going to clean this mess up now. President Trump won by a landslide. We are going to prove it, and we are going to reclaim the United States of America for the people who vote for freedom.
How come you're not suing in the Wisconsin counties that used it? Why are you only doing a recount?
And excuse me, that we're not out to the questions at this point. So excuse me, we're not at the questions at this point. My name is Jenna Ellis, and I'm the senior legal advisor to the Trump campaign, and I'd like to just explain now where we've been and where we're at and what you can expect from this process. So what you have heard, I'm sure, in the fake newspapers tomorrow will be one of two things. Either there was not sufficient evidence that we've presented, or we spoke too long. Okay, so what you've heard now is basically an opening statement. This is what you can expect to see when we get to court to actually have a full trial on the merits, to actually show this evidence in court and prove our case. This is not a Law and Order episode where everything is neatly wrapped up in 60 minutes. For those of you who are here in this room or have maybe tuned out in other networks, clearly you've never been court reporters. Trials take time. Putting on evidence takes time. This is basically an opening statement so the American people can understand what the networks have been hiding and what they refuse to cover, because all of your fake news headlines are dancing around the merits of this case and are trying to delegitimize what we are doing here. Let me be very clear that our objective is to make sure to preserve and protect election integrity. President Trump has been saying from day one that this is about maintaining free and fair elections in this country. It is not about overturning an outcome. It is about making sure that election integrity is preserved, and every American should want that. If every American is not on board with that, you have to ask yourself why. And if your fake news network is not covering this or allowing you to cover it fairly and accurately, you should ask yourself why. This is absolutely a legitimate legal basis. We have been asked to provide an entire case that generally would take years in civil litigation. I've been a prosecutor. I have tried cases with far simpler facts. One thing happened in a matter of minutes, and it still takes days. And we go through a jury process. This is the court of public opinion right now. We are not trying our case in the court of public opinion, because if we were, we would get unbiased jurors. I would strike 99% of you from the jury, and I would be allowed to because of the fake news coverage you provide. You are not unbiased jurors. And until you step out of your role as a journalist and actually go into a courtroom and you are a judge on a bench that has sworn an oath to be unbiased in our separation of powers, then your opinion does not matter. The facts matter, the truth matters, and if you are fair reporters, you will cover that fairly and appropriately, and you will allow coverage of our media team here and our legal team. That is absolutely shocking that all you cover are around the margins, and I've seen all of you taking pictures right now, and I can anticipate what your headlines are going to be. If you are not willing to talk about the evidence that has been presented, then that is absolutely unacceptable for journalistic standards. This is an opening statement. This is something where we have told you what the evidence will show, and we have given you a brief description. That happens in a courtroom all the time, where that's not the fact-finding process. That is just an overview. That is what we have given you today, because the American people deserve to know what we have uncovered in the last couple of weeks. Remember, this is such a short time frame, and this is an elite strike force team that is working on behalf of the president and the campaign to make sure that our Constitution is protected. We are a nation of rules, not a nation of rulers. There is not someone that just gets to pick who the next president is outside the will of the American people. And that is our task, because when we talk about voter fraud, it's actually election official fraud. That cannot stand. The Constitution requires that the state legislatures are the ones that make election law. It still has to go by the U.S. Constitution. But what has happened in this case is that state and local level officials, and all the way up, have changed the rules. That's what the Democrats do. If they don't like the rules, they change them. And they change them at the last minute. They manipulate them. They want to tear down our American system. Our founders were so brilliant that they anticipated this, that there would be corruption, there would be foreign influence, there would be attempts to manipulate the outcome of the election, especially with who they called our chief magistrate. I would encourage all of you to go home and actually read Alexander Hamilton's Federalist 68 and see what he described as an advocacy position to adopt and ratify the Electoral College and the process by which we select our president. We select our president through the Electoral College not because it disenfranchises voters, but because it is a security mechanism for exactly the type of corruption that we are uncovering. And every American should be grateful and thankful that our founders had the foresight to put in those protections and provisions to make sure that your legitimate legal vote is not disenfranchised.
All right, so that was Jenna Ellis, President Trump campaign senior legal advisor. A lot to take in from this news conference. Another photo.
President Trump's State Department delivered a stark warning to the incoming Biden administration on China's intention to become the global superpower of the world. In a 70-plus page document, the state policy planning staff says this: the Chinese Communist Party aims not merely at preeminence within the established world order, but to fundamentally revise world order, placing the People's Republic of China at the center and serving Beijing's authoritarian goals and hegemonic ambitions. While campaigning, President-elect Biden called China's President Xi a thug, but China hawks fear that Biden would not be as aggressive as would be needed to stop the threat.
China is going to eat our lunch? Come on, man. I mean, they're not bad folks.
Power back. Folks are getting threatened. So here's what Herschel Walker had to say as we get close to the close of this video.
Well, I'm a little bit sad because this country's in turmoil right now. You know, we have so many local officials trying to decide what to do right now, and we have people, citizens on the streets getting hurt. You see what happened in Washington. Everybody making up their own rules, but we can't do this. These are difficult times. So at difficult times, we don't need politicians. Politicians is what got us into this mess. We need leaders. I think we need to go right to the Supreme Court. Why are we out worrying about all these local leaders? Let's go right to the Supreme Court. These are not the times that we need to go through all this local this and local that, because we have people getting hurt, we have people getting destroyed, so much is going on. Let's go right to the Supreme Court. They're the ultimate judge that takes the Constitution and take the law. And that's what we need to decide what we need to do. And that's what we need to go by.